I'm loving it here. Who wouldn't? Please, come in. Let me get you a drink, and do try a tartlet. They're crab." "They're what?" Charlotte Black looked startled. "Crab," she smiled, emphasizing the B this time. She felt a giggle rise, and was pleased to see it reflected in Charlotte's face. "Just tinned, I'm afraid. Not fresh." "Yum," said Charlotte. There was a second's pause. Then, raising her eyebrows at Lizzie, she took a tartlet from the proffered tray and downed it with all the delicacy of a pelican scoffing mullet. "Lovely." Lizzie, locating a bottle of Pinot Gris amongst the collection on the kitchen island, watched the new arrivals as she poured. Her little fantasy would never have come to anything she could see, even if she was still CEO of Red Line Productions. Rob Carterham had already been discovered, and from the look he was giving Charlotte Black, it would take more than 6 figures and top billing to drag him away. She sighed. Had anyone ever looked at her like that? If they had, she honestly couldn't remember. "Oh, give it a rest," she told herself. "You're living the dream. Don't you dare feel sorry for yourself." She glanced around the room. It was refreshing. She'd thrown this little housewarming party at such short notice, just 2 weeks, but almost everyone had made the effort to come. Everyone, in fact, apart from Carrick Ferguson. Ferguson was her immediate neighbour to the south, and, more importantly for Lizzie's water use consent, downstream. Part of his station, Glen Carn, lay between her land and the distant Blackpeak, and it was his name that peppered the inch-thick resource consent decision which had arrived with the vineyard's title. Water under the bridge, or rather through the irrigation pipe? She hoped so. The river was still running, and Ferguson's sheep had survived after all. "Lizzie, there you are!" Oh, thank God. Richard had arrived. As ever, his honeyed Burton-esque tones turned every head in the room, and even Lizzie, who knew how hard he worked at perfecting them, felt her insides melt a little. A few seconds more and he had crossed the room, swept her into his 2-hour-a-day workout arms and treble-kissed her with European aplomb, all without creasing his shirt. "Hello, Richard." He raised his eyebrows conspiratorially at her, and she smiled her approval into his dancing grey eyes. "Yes, darling, you nailed your entrance first time. No need for a retake." Lizzie turned to her waiting guests. "Everyone, this is Richard Bourne," which of course everybody not from the moon already knew. A few jaws, she was pleased to see, had dropped. Even Charlotte Black looked excited. Perhaps her neighbours hadn't exactly expected Lizzie to provide a celebrity, but it was nice to be able to give them one all the same. "Richard, everyone." "Lovely to meet you all." Richard's smile swept the room. "Lizzie, you look gorgeous," he added as he always did, his eyes raking over her body theatrically, taking in the little black dress. It meant nothing, she knew. The compliment was a reflex of Richard's, his way of greeting every woman he met, and he would have said the same thing if she were in sweatpants with a bag on her head. But still, Lizzie drew herself up a little more as she poured him a glass of wine. It did feel good. "And this place," he continued, taking the glass from her and raising it at the rows of vines sweeping up the terrace to meet the hills and the snowy mountains behind them. "It's paradise. No wonder we couldn't keep you in London." Smiling, Lizzie followed his gaze. It was paradise. Her very own slice of it, and a thick one at that. All that blood she'd sweated had been worth it for this, a green and gold prize at the end of decades of tube strikes, congestion and gloom. "To success," said Richard with his usual knack for reading her thoughts. "To hard work," countered Lizzie, raising her glass. "Come on," he grinned. "You loved every minute of it." She couldn't argue. It was true, she had. Television had been her life, and now she had a new life, and, frightening as it sometimes seemed, she was quite determined to love it too. "Two old friends," she clinked her glass against Richard's, "who know me too well." She slipped her free arm through his. "Now, shall we mingle?" As she had at countless events, Lizzie guided him through the crowd. "So, what brings you to New Zealand, Mr. Bourne?" asked the nice lady from the garage, rather breathlessly. "I always said I'd go to the ends of the earth for Lizzie," Richard's voice boomed in the rafters, "and now, it seems, I must." He treated his audience to his most devastating smile.